Great. Welcome, everybody. This is a special meeting of the Conservation Commission on April 26th, starting at 7:02 p.m. Special meeting is called to discuss the availability of land from the state of Connecticut, an offer being made for the land at 7 Forest Road, and we'll discuss this evening, and then the other agenda item is a couple brief comments by the chair. And I'd like to first extend my thanks to the commission members for their flexibility and responsiveness and being able to come together on such short notice. It made it easy to arrange the meeting. So having said that,
Did you say the date?
yes.
Okay.
Having said that, I thought just a few facts about the property in question. Hopefully most of you have read the background, but just to have a visual on it up on the screen. 7 Forest Road is on the right side, and it's the text box will tell you that it's 0.12 acres owned by the state of Connecticut, and the state had received an offer of purchase of $1,500. These lots, and there are two of them together. Originally they were separate. They're together as 7 Forest Road, comprising 0.12 acres. These were originally, as I understand it, given away as door prizes, if you will, by a theater. I think the theater was in New Haven. Is that?
I'm not sure, I haven't gotten that far. But
Okay,
they were a lottery, they were prizes
Yes.
that were just given away.
So over time, some of them have been consolidated, and there's a home. You can see there's a block on the left of the block that 7 Forest Road is in, and there's a house there. On the other side of Forest Road, the south side, there are other blocks with other small parcels. Those are a bit more fragmented. The block that 7 Forest Road is in is owned mostly by the town of Woodbridge, and besides the small property that we're talking about today, there is another parcel owned by the town, and there is one other private parcel. I think it's up under the text box there. And it may be that there are two other smaller parcels owned by the town. So Forest Road comes off of Pease Road property, but it's near the junction of Jeremy Garden Lane, just to put that in context of the town.
And it really is just paper. It's
Uh,
not really a road, it's kind of like a driveway.
It was, my guess is that it would have been developed as a road if those units had been developed. So it was laid out as a road, and I don't
But in reality.
profess to understand paper roads completely, but there's still a road owned by the town. Is that correct, to your understanding?
As I understand
Barbara?
it, it really is not a road at this point in time, although it would be at a certain.
It could be still developed as a
Yes,
road.
Yes.
So
Yes.
the town owns that right of way.
Is it public access to
Yes.
go on there?
Yes.
About half of it is paved.
Yeah. And I've driven down to the end, as I believe Paul has, and you can go down to that road, and in fact, I'm thinking that those green dotted lines define roads, the rights of way the town has within those blocks. Because if they were parcels and they were going to be built on, people would need access to them. So I think that's why the green dotted lines are there, and you'll see that on the south side as well.
It looks like it's wetlands also. I know you looked at the map and you said it was.
Yes. Valerie, you feel adventuresome? You're familiar with the touchpad? If you just use the touchpad, and on the top right, it says map layer. Top right, up above the arrow,
Up, and
to the
your
right.
Okay.
Pull, and just click that once, And if you would click I think it says DEEP, second from the last one.
Oh, wherever, can you see?
Oh,
I
what?
don't have good eyesight.
Oh, click on that and then drag it down. Oh, no, next one over.
Yeah, I can't see that well.
I can help.
Got it? Yeah. There you go.
And then click on map layer again, and that will disappear. That list, oops. There we go, thank you. And you can get rid of the text box since we've read it already. And so you'll see that DEP has defined wetlands in those areas, and wetland soils.
If you
Check.
just looking at it, looks like it could even be more than that.
You know, in the spring time of the year, yeah, things get wetter, that they're not, Sharon may be able to comment more than I
It's
did, having
wetland
experienced
soils. It's soils versus how wet something is.
it. Yeah, okay.
Tim, what is the odd-shaped line up there in that same block that's
you go up a couple
outlined in
of properties.
brown? Hmm?
Like if you go
You
up a
mean
couple
right
here?
properties.
Right.
Yes,
Up,
that
yeah, up in
blob.
there, that.
I don't have certainty on that. My impression was that was another definition of wetlands.
Oh, what's
So we have what DEEP has on their maps, and this is the other layer we're looking at before we put the DEEP map up was strictly a town map. And for, how, I don't know the source of the wetlands in that case. I just know that, the DEEP is state data, and that's loaded and it goes on top of this, so we can look at it at the same time.
Can I, were you gonna say something about?
Hmm?
Were you gonna say something else?
No.
So, am I to understand that all of those, except for the 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes above Forest Road are all, and aside from the lots that are obviously houses, is state property?
No, the
Oh.
only piece that's state property here is the 7 Forest Road, the little box that we had highlighted in the
Oh.
beginning. Okay. I'll
And-
step away.
But the
from it.
rest is town property?
Let me jump over to the screen. I can perhaps show you
Tim,
better.
what is 5? Is 5 is
I
one
should
of the
brought
other
my
ones
glasses.
that's a.
That's
Look-
what I was gonna do, Paul, so just give me a second. Bless you. Bless you. It's impossible. Alright, better. Green is better. I made. This is Town of Woodbridge 5.
Okay.
And Sharon,
But what are all,
that's the state property.
okay, and who's all this property?
That's the town.
Okay,
Town owns the rest of that block.
and the state owns this?
And you'll see, this is,
State owns
done it
that.
more quickly for me. This is highlighted, well, except for the red boxes, the town owns it all.
Okay,
But
and,
the town must have gotten some of the other, and this one is a private. And,
I don't know.
oops.
So apparently the lots were given away
That's
as
the town.
raffles
The town
and
has
from a movie
also that
theater
one.
in
And how
New
about
So
Haven.
the
How
town,
about
just
Yeah.
to explain that, the town acquired the rights to
20s.
these properties at different times, and they became different deeds.
oh, I see,
And
okay.
that's why
I
they're
don't know what
they're
theater
very
it was.
differently. So
And now are those down there town property as well? Below Forest
most of, some
You
are,
would think it
I
was a
believe,
driveway.
some are not.
You wouldn't even know it was a
Some are
road.
not.
Down below.
Yeah.
Forest Road.
You know where that it used to be
I
a
think if
nursery,
we
that
click
house
on
at
the
the
big
corner,
one,
That's
They
town.
owned
it'll be
all
the
that
town of
land.
Woodbridge.
like down
And can we just
Jeremy
click
Garden
on the
Lane.
little one to see if that's a different kind of deed?
And then some,
No?
It's
That's
right
a
where
private
Peace
road.
Rose, yeah, is it right where Peace
little-
Road
a
turns
little
and
bit
Jeremy
out of our
Garden
scope.
Okay, I see, I
Road
just am trying to
starts.
get an idea, all right.
Yeah.
Tim, did they designate all of this as, it could have been farmland or any kind of other land other
Excuse
than
me.
residential? Did they,
Valerie, would you repeat the question, please?
did the state or did anybody designate this particular area, not just what we're voting on, farmland or any other type of land other than residential?
I have no knowledge of that.
Would it
And
say
is
on the
this-
lot card, on the property card? Would it say what zone it is?
Is this
You want me to try,
woodlands?
you want me to drive that?
It is mostly woodland. Paul, you agree? Mostly woodland back there?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. There's a house at the very end,
Or was it-
but there's a long stretch where there's nothing, and that's where this is, in the long stretch where there's nothing.
Got it.
I would also point out, I meant to point out, that on the right side, so it would be the east side, that's a very large piece of town land also.
The
That-
blank,
that-
where
And
the-
that's, right,
the wall
the
goes
blank,
up,
it's
yeah.
empty, it's, I believe, from memory, that's 81 Park Lane, and that goes down to Park Lane, obviously. And there are some walking trails on that parcel. And to the north, the top side, that is, and it's a little bit narrow there, just right at the top, and has a little wetland designated. That is Eversource property. Those, eventually that contains the high-tension power lines that run through a lot of the town. And that is a large piece of property and runs down to the JCC. So that, just contextually, that's where it is. So those are two large pieces of property, and that also has walking trails on it. So. Other questions about Forest, just to make sure everybody's got the same?
Do you expect, you probably don't know, but do you anticipate that the other lots would become available too that aren't already owned by the town? Is it owned by the state, the other lots?
There, as far as I know, there are no other lots owned by the state.
Okay,
How the state
got this one lot.
got this one, I don't know, and I
They
didn't.
won it in the lottery.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody donated it to the state. I
Mhm.
don't know. A look at the property card may reveal something, but I didn't bother to try to really drill it down. And my
Okay.
recollection is the deeds got handwritten, so a little harder to work with. Any other facts we can lay out for further discussion? Okay.
Tim, I know your email did this, but maybe you could describe the connection of this property to other parts of the Greenway.
No, as I mentioned, there are walking trails on the Park Lane property and on the Eversource property. And the expansion of the Greenway, as we have envisioned it in the Greenway plan that we adopted at the end of last year, talked about trying to connect a segment from the Country Club of Woodbridge through a narrow strip across the street, from the Country Club of Woodbridge, across Ansonia Road, Route 243. The Land Trust owns a very narrow strip that runs up and then would connect through the Greenway would connect through this very block of land that 7 Forest is in the middle of. It's the way we defined it in the Greenway plan. And thence to 81 Park Lane, veering off a little, and back then onto Eversource property, and to join up with those various trails. And that connection, combined with expanding the trails, finding a way to pass through the JCC property, would allow us then to envision to pass through the cemetery that is on Pease Road, cross the street, and through the property there, which has this, soccer fields and playgrounds, and out the back. And there being an easement required at a place, but you could connect back to the trails that are, come off of Beecher Road, and from thence you could go into town center. So it's a bit of a circle, but it's a way to connect people through the greenway spaces, but also give them meaningful destinations of the Leggy Fields and the town center and so forth. And the JCC, of course, and then going the other way, which is a little harder because it's a downhill. You can get down to Route 63 that way also by using this connection. Other questions? Okay. So the email we received asked for by May 1st, recommendation, if we had one, for the Board of Selectmen regarding the purchase of the property. Anybody like to put a motion on the table regarding the property? Or
Well, before I do that, I was thinking just to comment on what a nice large parcel of land that is, and it has so few difficulties creating a more unified parcel of land. So it seems like for that reason alone, it's a nice, if the town owns it, and they'll have more control and more ability to preserve it and or develop it, which
Or-
I'd prefer they didn't, but
right.
it seems like
It
it's in
gives
their best
options.
interest, yeah, and the fee is nominal.
And we know fragmentation is not generally a good thing with parcels of land. It doesn't help
Right,
the wildlife and so forth, so it's good to unify where we can and make parcels larger, and this, adding this to the parcel 81 Park would work towards that.
Is there any harm in recommending the purchase with a conservation requirement attached to the deed?
With a conservation,
Requirement attached to the deed?
that can be recommended.
That's a good point. The town would buy the property, but it would also be subject to a conservation easement, so that it couldn't be developed.
I mean, it's wetlands,
it is what.
connects.
in the middle of wetlands, yes.
Hmm.
That's a good
I
point.
have a question about the 1,500. Was it offered for sale at 1,500, or did somebody offer unilateral?
It was my understanding, and this may be in the note,
It's in the letter, I believe.
that the state was offered $1,500 for it.
So that's like a unilateral, and I wasn't,
Somebody,
they didn't offer it, somebody offered
So
it.
it's-
So my
That's-
next question is, because it came that way, can they now, we have the right of first refusal, I'm wondering at that 1,500,
my-
does it pertain to if they counter at a higher price?
my understanding, which is only based on, asking people, and it's not illegal, it wasn't, and nobody was there was no person with legal background that I asked, but just other people. My understanding is that, and this was in the letters also, the first part of it, the town attorney made comment to people that this was beginning, but at that time there was nothing to be done at the right step in the process. Then the town would be notified. We were given, so essentially we were given a heads up that this was going on, and the right step we would be notified. So that, combined with what I heard in talking to people, makes me think that the person made a serious offer.
Right.
It must have been, documented in a certain way. They must have, whether they put a binder down, I don't know. But it was serious enough and firm enough that the state then, it was the right time, the step in the process where they notified the town. And my understanding is that the town, what that means, the first right of refusal, is that the town can match the offer and
It's It's generally how a right of first
Right.
refusal
Yeah.
works. The selling party has to essentially accept the offer subject to a third party's right of first refusal.
Does it even go that far? They have to accept it? Okay.
They,
Yeah.
yeah, so if somebody just came up and said, I'll give you $1,000, they wouldn't bother to go to the town if
Right.
if the state wasn't
Right.
intending to sell it for that.
Right.
So,
Right.
in most cases, this is, and it's kind of a loose term because people use it pretty loosely in terms of what it is,
Okay.
but generally is the selling party has agreed to sell it for that price, subject to the person holding the right of first refusal to buy it instead at that price.
Right.
So if we said we wanted to buy it at that price, generally first refusal, the offering party would not have the option of increasing
Increase
their
it.
offer. This is supposed to be their best and final offer.
That's interesting, because I thought that's what might happen. So that we said, yes, we will buy it, but then they can
No,
counter and
apparently
say,
not.
oh, we'll
Yeah,
give
it's
you.
a-
And that-
Generally,
it's
for a
tricky.
right of first refusal, that's not the way
That
it's
doesn't happen.
done,
That's very
so.
interesting.
Yeah, if it was a bilateral, whereas they offered for sale, and then somebody came, then we would say, we would have the right. And I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure, because it came from the buyer. I'm just wondering, because that's like, they didn't offer it for sale in the first place.
Right.
So they didn't really offer it, it was a unilateral, the buyer said, I'll buy it for this amount, and then we're coming in and saying, we'll buy it, we'll take it for the same
Mhm.
price.
Mhm.
I don't know, I'm not sure.
So there's
Because
generally,
they didn't offer it for sale at that price.
so there's generally two
Yeah.
options. There's a right of first offer, where we would have the right to make the first offer to buy it. He could accept our offer. In this case, it's been described as a right of first refusal, which means somebody else has made an offer for it, and before the selling party can sell it to the other person, we have to decline to buy it at the same
same
price and
price.
terms.
Right.
So if we accept the price and terms, then we would go forward. That would be the end of their discussion with the prospective buyer.
Well, is there any discussion needed as to whether we all think that it would be useful for the town to own it versus not owning it? I personally think it's a good idea for them to own it, the town to own it.
Would you like to make a motion to?
I'd like to make
To
a
that effect,
motion that, the town acquire this small piece of land that's labeled Lot 7 of Forest Road in Woodbridge, Connecticut, for $1,500 and match the offer that was already proposed by another buyer
With conservation.
with a conservation easement if possible. I want it no matter what, but I prefer it with a conservation easement.
So, Sharon is continuing her sentence that the recommendation, or on putting on the table the motion to buy the land at the price of $1,500 and with a conservation easement attached
Yeah.
to the land.
Can I just ask a question? I mostly want the town to buy it,
Right.
but, and then we can deal with the conservation aspects of it because it's in wetlands another time. I don't want to have
Oh.
the town board of selectmen say, well, we don't want it if it's a conservation easement.
Correct.
So I'd like
With a strong recommendation for.
a strong
Right.
recommendation that
Okay.
it's a conservation
Not an
easement.
absolute.
So the wording,
Not a requirement.
so you want a period at the end of the buy it for the $1,500?
Yep. And there's a strong recommendation that it,
Additionally,
additionally, it's a strong recommendation that there's a conservation easement on that piece of land.
Kathy, could you hear that?
Additionally, a stronger condition.
Strong
Recommendation.
recommendation.
Sorry, I should talk louder, Kathy.
Everybody's
Everyone should talk louder.
The microphone's on.
So do we have a second?
I'll
Second.
second that.
Only Barbara wants it.
Rock, paper, scissors.
I think Barbara said it first, so.
Should we all read that?
Okay.
Okay.
So discussion?
We have a motion on the table Yes, Diana?
I did have one question, so because we don't know anything about the buyer or the person who made the offer to the state. It's not like we're usurping the land trust or something here, right?
The buyer was named,
Okay.
and it was associated with a company
Okay.
for whatever reason. I do not have further information. A brief research on my part did not provide any certainty that I had found
Okay.
who the buyer was.
I Googled it also,
Yeah.
just to be curious who it was. I mean, it almost doesn't matter in this situation, because I think
Right.
it makes sense for all the reasons we
Right.
talked about. But it appears to be a person from Mexico, for a company that does sourcing in Mexico, which I don't know if the person's buying it as a lark or what, but it doesn't
Yeah.
seem to make sense.
And that was sort of my comment, is I didn't reach certainty, because that didn't make total sense that that was the right person to me. But it could be, but bottom line is, we don't know motivation.
Okay.
And as Paul said,
Just making sure
how
we're
much
not-
that matters is really open debate. I mean,
You were trying to make sure it wasn't another land
right,
conservation.
and that's a fair
Yes.
point.
And I think that's a valid.
Yeah.
I think it almost doesn't matter who the other prospective buyer is, unless it was the Woodbridge Land Trust.
Right.
But in that,
Mhm.
it doesn't appear to be the Woodbridge Land Trust, so in that case, I don't see that it necessarily matters. I think the points that you raised, that it allows the lot to be one contiguous large piece of land, is important. It's in a wetlands area, is
Yeah.
important to be protected. It's part of the greenway plan that we just worked on, in terms of a connection between
Mhm.
one part of the greenway and another part of the greenway.
Mhm.
So I think for all those reasons, and the fact that it's only $1,500, and we have $87,000 in our account available for open space purchases, I think it's kind of a
Perfect.
no-brainer.
Now,
Well,
I now have a question. You're saying that. I mean, is this motion saying that the Conservation Commission is going to use their funds to buy it, or we are recommending that the town buy it?
well,
And
Good
if I
question.
hadn't recognized you, I was going to ask Paul if he would like to make an amendment to the motion.
I would.
Propose an amendment to the motion.
I would like to make a friendly amendment to the motion that we use $1,500 of our $87,000 open space budget to purchase this piece of land.
15.
$1,500 of the,
The amendment.
Second the amendment, okay.
Is a friendly amendment, a special type of amendment that doesn't
Ju-
require a...
I'm just a friendly
a
kind of
vote?
guy.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Should I
Well,
restate my whole thing to include that?
No,
we
I
have to
think
vote on
we'll-
the amendment on the floor.
I don't think we've done an amendment before, and this will
Okay.
be
We have to
new
vote
ground
on
for
the
us.
So I
It's
think with a
exciting.
friendly amendment, can Sharon accept it without voting on it?
I think that's in the back of my mind, but I don't know for
Well,
sure. So,
if I can accept it, I do accept it.
okay. Well, why don't we, any discussion on Paul's motion about using conservation funds that suggest to the town that
Very-
the funding for this
Come from
comes from
that.
the conservation?
yes,
And the answer, Barbara, would be that we're recommending to the town that they buy it. We don't have authority to buy
right,
No,
land
Right.
by ourselves,
but
so,
using
but using the fund.
conservation,
A small
yes.
little-
So we'll, if there
War
are
chest.
That's exactly.
no further discussion on Paul's amendment, we'll call that to a vote. All those in favor of using conservation funds for the purchase of the Seven Forest Road? Looks like it's unanimous. No votes. Okay, great. Any further discussion on the main motion? Which is to recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they obtain the parcel at Seven Forest Road for a sum of $1,500, and that Conservation is recommending that the funds from the open space funds come from the open space fund in the amount of $1,500.
I would
With a
suggest that
strong
we,
recommendation on
With a strong
With
Con-
strong
The
recommendation.
conservation easement.
Thank you.
it's not for
And I'm
that.
trusting Kathy has the more exact wording. on that. But
How's that
I
going,
wanted
Kathy?
to summarize for the, so you know what we're voting on. Okay?
So in terms of process going forward, do we need to send a memo to the Board of Selectmen with our recommendation?
Well, we first need to
Why
vote
don't
on
we
it.
hold on that, and
We
if
got
there's
a
no
motion
further
vote.
discussion,
Oh, I thought we
we'll
did.
take the vote on the main motion, again, to recommend the purchase, $1,500 in used conservation funds, in summary. All those in favor, please indicate, and that, again, is unanimous.
Did we just do
Seeing no votes.
No, we didn't, actually, we
Okay.
were just talking about the language of the motion.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
I get, well, I guess we could have put in the motion to send a memo to the Board of Selectmen, but
I think that's just
That's
what we
a-
should do.
Isn't
Anticip-
that a requirement anyway? Isn't that
Yeah.
what
well, we
it
have to
is?
notify them, but anticipating that we were gonna go down this path, I
The
wrote up
liberty.
I wrote the memo, a memo, and I incorporated most of the, I incorporated the items that were in the email as to the reason why, added a note about the wetlands at the bottom. So I'll give you a minute to read through that, and take suggestions, if it needs to be amended. I did change wording a little bit here and there just to flow it better.
I
So
have
if-
one, proposed, not change, addition, I guess one might say. Near third point down, the 222 Greenway expansion plan envisions connecting, I would say the property now known as Country Club of Woodbridge. That's just a nickname for that property, so I think it needs to be specified.
Maybe you could also insert the word "and the Racebrook track" also, because that's one of the points is to connect in that direction.
Yes, that's a good idea, so
I would put that first, and then the.
Racebrick,
and then
Racebrick,
property
okay.
owners.
Okay.
Tim, can you refresh my memory, what was the May 1st deadline? Was that for us to vote by, or was it for the
town to respond.
town to respond by?
Well,
That-
The May
May
first
1st
deadline?
date was to,
It's
I
for the
believe
town
the
to
email to
respond, I
us
believe.
said they needed our responses by May 1st.
oh, our response.
Our responses, so we have to be complete. What the deadline is for
Oh,
the
okay.
town to respond to the state,
Right.
I don't, that wasn't crystal clear to me. I'm sure it's soon thereafter. Don't know.
So if there was a conservation easement on the property, who would, presumably it would be a third party that would hold the conservation easement?
Yeah.
So would that be the
Well,
land trust?
It could be done that way, but I believe also it just could be,
I think the town can hold
The
it.
town
town
can
can
hold
hold
the
it,
town.
yeah.
I think in
Just
this
running
case, the
that through
town
my
can,
mind.
it's better if the town does, cause it's in the middle of, maybe
Town
more
land.
restrictive. but
Yeah.
it's town land.
Yeah, because the town can hold a conservation easement, or it can give
But I
to
did
another
clarify
entity.
that, and we should maybe at a different meeting clarify this, is what a town conservation easement means, because I do think that the Board of Selectmen can unconserve land if they so choose. So it's a different level of protection than if the land trust owns
But it
it.
has to be deeded.
That would be
Well,
No,
that's
no,
already
no, I
an
happened.
interesting
No, it's
thing.
happened.
I thought
It's happened to the
conservation easement
firehouse.
was a legal entity that you
No.
cannot undo.
No, the firehouse.
I thought if it was deeded, it couldn't be.
That's what
Well-
my understanding is too.
Well, let's
Maybe
talk,
it's
let's
not.
raise this as an issue at another meeting, since this is a
Yes.
special meeting, because I think that would be helpful for us to understand that.
Yes.
Maybe get some counsel on that.
Be really clear on that, because that would make a lot of difference on a lot of things.
Right.
But then the only thing I would, add here is just our strong recommendation for,
Yeah, that's what I was just
Perfect.
writing down. And
Thank you.
would it'd be correct to say additionally, the Conservation Commission strongly recommends that a conservation easement be placed on the parcel? That's,
Based on the-
addition, is that the spirit of your, yeah,
Mhm.
okay,
Mhm.
just to translate it into a sentence, okay.
So maybe not two additionallys, like, we
Oh, yeah, I'll work that out.
recommend that,
The
the
commission
monies come
also,
from-
the commission
yeah.
also,
conservation easement is a voluntary legal agreement that permanently limits the use of the land in order to
Yeah.
protect conservation
Yeah.
values.
well,
yeah,
let's talk about
that-
it in
and that can
another
be put in
meeting.
the deed.
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
what-
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, any other comments on the memo?
So where does it say about the wetlands? I thought I saw
At
that.
the very bottom,
Okay.
well, not the very bottom, but the, right.
Oh.
Some forest roads and
Second.
inland wetland areas defined by.
Oh, right,
DEP.
right, right. Oh, okay.
I think that's a well-written letter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Thank
think
you.
I am
Thank
very-
you, thank you. Okay, end of that topic?
Yep. End of the meeting.
Do we need to adopt the letter, or do we?
If you feel you need to, but I think
I think-
consensus, we're gonna send it.
Yeah.
and-
We're gonna send it
I think
tomorrow
it's-
or tonight?
If you hadn't made changes, it would have been tonight, but.
Sorry.
No,
You
no,
can
I-
handwrite in those edits and send it over.
I'm gonna go home and eat dinner, who knows, after dinner. It'll be either.
Okay. Today or
it-
tomorrow.
It will be out tomorrow,
Okay.
by the latest.
Okay.
Notify it. Let us know where it goes out, please.
Okay, yeah, I'll
Thank you, Tim.
I'll send you a note. There was a second agenda item, just a few comments.
On the special meeting?
Yes, there
Oh,
was a
okay.
second.
I missed it.
Share a comment. So, really two items, it's plural, there I have two areas I'd like to comment on. One is, was at attended the Coop meeting on Monday evening. They also endorsed and recommending to the town that the town acquire the parcel.
Good.
And the general conversation was, this is, my words not theirs, no-brainer. And that may have been said in the meeting, but, and their thought was leave the use to a later time. They didn't really get into a use or a real big discussion about it, so, that was good. So, the big thrust of their meeting, as has been the case for many months and mentioned before, they're working their way through the item that's in their charge to do, which is to maintain the list of publicly owned properties. And that list is divided into 4 parts. And I'm going to skip the first 3, but the one I just wanted to note, because it ties into what we've been talking about tonight, are a list of properties where the town has the right of first refusal. And so it's basically any property owned, well, not basically. Part of it is any property owned by the state. So that's a state law.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are other properties
water company.
It seems to me water company and electrical
Electric
utilities. I
utilities.
think that's state law also.
Yeah.
Whether there's anything else, I don't recall seeing that actually on the list, but this list is undergoing significant change, and that's why it's taking them some time to do it, moving things around because things were miscategorized. So just a little insight.
So why are they making this list? What's the,
It's
They're-
required,
That's
it's
their-
required in their,
It's
That's their charge,
That's their
Yeah.
charge.
okay,
to make a
And-
list and to
keep it in
And
the
it-
determine the best town usage. I think that's a good,
Well, they make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen
Right.
on the proper use of
the use of
town-owned
Owned
land. And
land
then,
and buildings.
yep,
Yep.
land and buildings.
and
will we
following
see
that
that?
paragraph for that charge, it says, you should keep a list of these, of town-owned property in these 4 categories. Even though the last one's not, we must phrase it differently, because the last one's not really town-owned property, it's where we have right of
We
first
have an
refusal.
interest though. So can you share that list with us if you get it?
Yeah, it's not been.
No, but once it's
the
done.
original one is public,
Uh-huh.
available. The one they're working on is not publicly shared yet.
No, but when it is, can we?
Oh, when it is, yeah.
Do we have an opportunity to have a member of our commission, work with them on that list?
That's why I'm going to the meetings and have been. And that was when we started after the last election, when we first met. It's one of the items we discussed. I asked if anybody was interested in being the representative, and did not, no one at that point was interested. That may change, and so I've been doing it. And there's been a big tie-in with the research for the Greenway plan. And so I've been feeding them information. I found some things that were not quite right. And so I've been feeding them that information and then they, so I think it started to open their eyes and they started redoing the list, and it's really kind of blown apart, and they've had to go property by property now, so it's a big undertaking, so it'll be a nice tool when it's finished. The old one, actually, this was done, it was a paper book, it was a binder, maybe this big, with all the deeds in it, and it's a fairly interesting document, back to the time of Russell Stoddard and I think the town attorney, before he was the town attorney, was part of that group that put that together back when. The last thing on Coupop is they mentioned that they're aware of the work we were starting to do with, or hope to do with the Amity Historical Society, and they offered that during the research they're doing now in the deeds, they've found some interesting information, historical information buried in the deeds they thought we might be interested in, so they offered to work with us on that or give us that information when the time is right. They also offered, and I say this just so we can think about it going forward, they also offered to have a joint meeting. They said they were willing to have a joint meeting, so we'll pick that up
That's a great idea.
next time, so look forward to that. So that last point about the Amity Historical Society ties into my second point. And I'm maybe looking to save a little time at the next meeting. I believe the Amity Historical Society is gonna get back to us, at some point. I
I
lost.
can say that the chairman has had more than one operation, so she's
Right.
not been
Geez,
operating at full
off her feet.
speed, but she
And
certainly
that's fine.
intends to.
But, you know, the intention seems to be to go forward. We mentioned last meeting, we were looking for perhaps 3 people to work with, 3 people from the Historical Society. And I haven't spoken to Barbara directly, so by inference, it would make sense for Barbara to be one of the people, of course, but we're looking for 2 other people. So if you know, rather than cast around at the next meeting, and I think what I've described what that project is, I think everybody should be aware. And if you're interested, just let me know, drop me a note, and then we won't have to spend a lot of time twisting arms at the next meeting, finding a person. I'm gonna say I have interest because, I have some thoughts on, well, let me back up and say 2 things. There's gonna be, to me, 2 parts to this. There's gonna be the history part, and there's gonna be a technology part. How do you know, just helping the Historical Society understand how this might be computerized. I think they may have somebody that does their website, and that'll be a no-brainer. They just have to outsource that. But I have some thoughts about how they might even outsource the historical side. So I'm
You know,
interested to be able to just convey that, at least at the beginning, but don't necessarily need to.
you know, another
be
person
about
that
going
might
on.
be willing to possibly do a little bit, since his job is doing such as Jason Morrell, who could add a lot of technology help and was, you know, head of the commission for 8 years, so
Yeah.
he might be
Yeah.
willing to step in for,
Yeah, we'll see.
Be helpful.
We'll see what they think they need. We're going to try to help them out as best we can, so we have success. So that was it. Those were my comments. Again, drop me a line if you're interested at all. I think it will just be sort of steering committee, try to figure out, because we're not going to write the history. I think that's going to have to be the Historical Society, but we may have to just lend some, review and coordinate with our maps and so forth.
Well,
I
I think
make
there
a mo-
needs to be a common understanding in the beginning of what the goal is
Right.
in this project,
Right.
and then it
Yes.
can be decided.
That's why I say I'd like to be
well,
there at
maybe
the
we should do a
beginning.
little more envisioning as a group too, so that we all agree on it.
I think, yes. I think it
Well,
will
a
be
10-minute
helpful.
discussion might be nice.
Yeah, maybe more than
Not
10
at
minutes.
this meeting, though.
I
No.
think,
We're about to
I
adjourn
think
this
that's
thing.
gonna be very valuable after the first session of talking to the Historical Society.
Maybe
Because-
they could come
because-
and talk to us.
Because what, what we envision might be
Right,
way different than what they even wanna
I know, but
start to endeavor.
if we flush it out as a group, we might come up with some good ideas.
Yeah,
Anyway, I
think-
move to
I think
adjourn
the
this
sense
meeting.
of the Historical Society's thoughts are,
Second.
you have asked, you, the commission, have asked us to help out, so yes, we will help you in your project on the research and the development of the historical statement.
Content.
So,
It also could be content for the Historical Society's website too, which would be an additional benefit. If it's gonna be a QR code, it could go to a section where it has short stories about significant historic areas within town.
Or
And that's where the
historical-
QR code could send it.
Historical people.
Okay.
Can I
We'll-
move to
we'll-
adjourn
we'll-
this meeting?
Yeah, because we're not gonna discuss further. And I heard a second,
Yes, you did.
and that
Whoa, an hour.
it looks like it's 7:51.
Apparently our sweet spot is 2
Subtracting.
items on the agenda, so
Thank you
that's
all.
what we should aim for.